because I think you have to be a conspiracy theorist to be first to an issue that's uncovered, because anything that's an uncovered issue is called a conspiracy theory, and then one day it isn't. They were right. People search something up using AI, and that might be better short term for retrieving the information, but then they forget it, so they're not practicing anything to do with their memory. It's been oversaid so many times on all these political podcasts, but Europe's going to keep on shifting right. That's just inevitable.
Hello, Elliot. It's amazing to have you on my show in your studio.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I think this is going to be a podcast. Usually I've been doing podcasts about politics specifically, but this is pretty much going to be more about societal issues plus politics, if we can dive into that. And I think one of the biggest questions recently in politics, especially with the emergence of social media, with people pushing their agenda through social media, would be how do trends like masculinity, like probably feminism in some way, but it's probably a bit gone by now. How do those trends, in your opinion, shape the minds of young people?
I think a big factor is the technology, and the technology fuels the trends. So the technology in this case is the online world, social media. We've had this new revolution, in my opinion, bigger than the industrial one, and we're about to have another one that's the AI revolution that's going to be even bigger.
Oh, yeah.
And that affects the trends because it flips the incentive models. So before, you had newspapers and they had certain incentives at play that would lead to certain news stories, certain articles. The medium is a message, right? And that affects how information is conveyed. Now, it's different because we've got the internet. We've got things like Twitter, where if you write a provocative tweet, you're going to get interactions, you're going to get likes, you're going to get hate comments, but those hate comments are going to fuel more people to get to your post, and then you're going to get more people liking it, and it just keeps on spiraling. So what you want to do there to earn money from Twitter, to gain followers, to gain traction, is be provocative. That then leads to trends that might not even be a reflection of what people actually think. It's just what people use to benefit themselves in a very individualistic, selfish way. You see 10% of people on Twitter make 92% of the noise. I think that's very telling with how trends are created now. Trends are no longer created by this wisdom of the crowds, where everyone comes to this perfect utopian general consensus and then they follow the trend. You've got these trailblazers like there always are, but they're in a much smaller minority now, and they can impact the culture in a magnitude of the magnitude that they can impact the culture is so unprecedented. Everything's on steroids now, literally, just the speed of the internet, the reach you can get. And not only is it the reach you can get instantly whilst sat on the toilet tweeting, it's that you no longer have the barrier of institutions where people have been vetted, they've gone and got a degree, maybe for up to 7 years or 4 years standard or 3. No, anyone can start a trend now. And that's both exciting and terrifying.
And now those trends are being more and more vetted by the government. So governments are trying to, of course, get hold of social media in some way to just control what people are trying to say. Of course, for people not to convey the message that the government doesn't want. For example, in Ukraine, it's not really good to say something against Ukraine, right? Because we're in the war. And as a politician, I know that very well. But tell me something about social media influencing. You've been in this sphere for a while now, and are you planning to make a living off of that, or do you consider it more like short-lived? All those trends, it's going to eventually expire, and people are going to become less interested in you.
I think whether people stay interested in me depends on the value that I can provide them. So as long as I keep on providing value, then I will grow my platforms and that'll be sustainable and I'll build a community. But I think these things are going to keep on growing. Social media is going to keep on growing. And what fascinates me is the shift now from maybe 2 or 3 messages being conveyed to every single person having their specialized algorithm tailored to them. And it means that you've got this concept of, I think it's the omni-cause that Mary Harrington calls it. And it's this idea that you can have, because of social media algorithms pushing certain messages, one cause that people stand for. People wearing the Palestinian keffiyeh whilst also campaigning against climate change, whilst also campaigning against anti-trans bigots. And these things have nothing in common, yet they're all uniting the same people. So you've got that on one hand, because algorithms can feed us the same messages. And I think that's true. But in a weird paradoxical way, you've also got this splintering of culture. And I don't want to go off on a tangent away from your question too much, but it's so fascinating how you've got these trends that do unite people and these causes that have nothing to do with each other politically, that people all root for because they want to be part of that tribe. At the same time, the actual thing that matters, which is culture and having unifying ideas and even things as trivial as memes that you can all relate to, they're all getting placed into their own very thin echo chambers. And I think that's dangerous.
And what's been interesting about algorithms is we're getting feed exactly what is going to provoke us, or what we're going to like, but more that's going to provoke us, especially on X, after Elon Musk, of course, has purchased X. I know many of my friends who are more left-wing, they have abandoned X completely because they say they cannot bear the fact that it's always provocative stuff. It's always pictures, it's always images, it's always text that's being fed to you, that is going to get you enraged and provoke a reaction so that you have to write something. But I think Instagram and YouTube is kind of different than X. How is there such a difference? Because while I've been using Instagram, it's been such a gap between me using Instagram and Twitter, because Twitter is just short, it's not even content, it's just short replies, short messages. And Instagram is usually full-on content, reels, trying to convey a certain message.
Well, I think Twitter's unique in that it just does have a particular political leaning right now. And I wouldn't be afraid to call that out. And I think people all know it, that Twitter is way more right-wing now. Maybe that's because of snowflakes leaving Twitter and going to Blue Sky. Maybe it's because there was a bit of a takeover from the right. Who knows? I think it's a bit of both. But you just need to look at the app functions. So Twitter, the timeline that you see, is nice. You can just show your following. But when you open up the app, it's not on your following. It's on your recommended. TikTok, it's also recommended. It's your For You page. Instagram, it's different. It's people that you're following. It's non-chronological. So it's not based on when they uploaded. It used to be, before 2016, Instagram feeds were chronological. So it would just be, my friend uploaded this many minutes ago. My other friend uploaded this before. Now it's the influencer that I follow. They uploaded something super cool and that got a load of likes. So it's been pushed to the top of my recommended tab. But on Instagram, it's still much healthier. And that's why I'll say I spend too much time on Instagram. I think a lot less than most people, but the reason I find myself attracted to that more than other platforms is because it is still people that you follow. So you can very much cultivate a good crowd on Instagram that make you a better person. Compared to Twitter, it's just the Wild West. You're at the mercy of whatever was the most provocative tweet. And the difference between Twitter and TikTok, when both of them have the For You page, is that Twitter's just a lot less regulated. There's a lot more freedom on there, and there are trade-offs to that. Freedom's great, but it comes with consequences. So I think there's trade-offs to everything. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. And I liked the idea of Twitter initially and the freedom, but I just see the direction it's heading in. It's absolutely insane. And I'm like, where does it go from here?
What is your experience with social media? How did it shape your mind in terms of political beliefs? I can say every person is influenced by social media, especially when it comes to politics in some shape. And the same as I have been when I first started my political journey, I thought, oh, this is coming up, this is cool. And it's very easy to kind of illustrate some sort of fear through social media, because it's images, it's all colorful. You can add music, and it's going to be all cool. Especially podcasting. Podcasting is more utilized by right-wing media. What was your experience? Surely you care about politics, you care about societal issues. How did your views maybe change over time? And did that have anything to do with social media?
I think the main formative experience for my views was the job I used to do producing trigonometry. That was so formative, and I'm so grateful to have had that opportunity. And that built and altered on a lot of loose ideas that I had from scrolling online. I think the big thing is that everything is very shallow and misinformation spreads very quickly and very easily. What's the answer to that? Fact checking, maybe, but who's doing the fact checking? There are all of these things caught up. I'd say the biggest influence social media had on me was probably just fortunate, but I managed to fall into positive echo chambers. I managed to guide myself into positive spirals. So things like choosing fitness influencers that are looking after their bodies, and you do the same, you go to the gym and you become a more hardworking, industrious individual. So I think the biggest thing for me was the ability to have a question, have an idea, and search it up, and it'd be answered straight away. Like that's incredibly powerful. So I would say in my case, and I'm probably ignorant to a lot of the things that social media has shaped with me, like it's just I haven't noticed them because they've snuck in, but a lot of social media, and I think Freya India speaks about this as well, who's amazing, is that social media is ultimately like a reflection of you as a person, and you take it in the direction that you want to go in, and it amplifies that. So maybe I was dragged in certain ways, but I think actually I was able to drag myself in directions even further and learn more than anything.
So you've been able to control yourself to a certain extent.
I guess so. That's one way of putting it. Look after myself, answer questions that school didn't answer, parents didn't answer. And I think that's why I'm very white pill, actually, for the amount of complaining I do about the internet, is that it can answer anything. Just fucking search it up, bro. You need to cut that.
Have you ever fallen
just
for...
search it up, bro.
Have you ever fallen for conspiracy theories? Like actually believed in one?
I'm naturally very skeptical of conspiracy theories.
To any information that's provided online?
Definitely not. I think you can have a radar for these things, and if it's one person saying it, then like, yeah, it might be true, but it's unlikely. And then it sort of reaches a point where quite a few people are saying that it's true, and you're like, okay, this is maybe worth investigating. So I think maybe me having that view on things, I will never be first to an issue to like uncover it, because I'm very skeptical of doing that and being the one actually like ramming the door down with conspiracy theories, because I think you have to be a conspiracy theorist to be first to an issue that's uncovered, because anything that's an uncovered issue is called a conspiracy theory, and then one day it isn't. They were right. So maybe that's me being a bit risk averse and boring, but yeah, I generally try and stay away from conspiracy theories until they become more mainstream.
What is something that you particularly believe in politics? What is your affiliation as an? I don't know if you can really determine the party you would be rooting for in the UK, because here it's so complicated. I've dealt with a lot of politicians here, and here I would say the Conservatives, Labour, Liberal Democrats, Greens, they always shift and change to the direction that the main populace is moving in. So it's like parties are always changing, and you won't really, like, by sticking to a certain ideology, you will be most likely lost in time, because this trend is going to be gone, and you're going to be still there reminiscing of the time when something has been popular, but it's not now. Surely there are some trends like reform. I think is pretty much many people, especially outside of London, are intending to vote for reform. What is your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think reform are going to keep on growing, And more than anything, that's down to the incompetence of both Labour and the Conservatives. Conservatives had 14 years and they absolutely messed everything up. All the promises they made repeatedly, they kept on breaking. And now Labour's inherited that and they've done an even worse job with it. So we're stuck in a corner a little bit at the moment. And with that, there's going to be discontent that breeds. And other parties like Reform are going to come into play, especially when they promise to do things that people are most annoyed about, like stop mass immigration or mass uncontrolled migration coming into the country. So I think they had five. They have 5 MPs at the moment.
They have 5, although the conflict between Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage, of course, is going on, and it's quite disturbing for Reform UK to almost like lose one of the 5 main MPs who's been very prominent for their party. Yeah,
well, the question is what's going to happen when Nigel Farage doesn't have to deal with 4 other MPs, but when he has to deal with 40 other MPs, if he's already getting into these conflicts. And I saw the economist Liam Halligan speaking about this, how he thinks by the next election, Reform are going to have about 10 to 15 candidates anyway, because of by-elections and other MPs dying and whatever.
They're going to learn how to do this. So far, they've just probably not figured out how to properly exploit the advantages that they have. For example, they've got a lot of youth vote, and literally a lot of my friends who are even in London, a lot of them are now going to the extremes, going to the Reform, which they see as a solution. And I've never understood that, to be honest. I've never understood that. But there seem to be quite a lot of young people who are lost. And the same as there were and are plenty of influencers, people like Jordan Peterson, Chris Williamson, addressing those problems, speaking up about them, and getting a lot of views, getting a lot of likes, because people like when their problems are being paid attention to. What do you think is the path that youth has ahead of them? Because it seems like a lot of young people do not have a clear direction. They either go for everything that life has for them and somehow get into the sphere that they need eventually figure out what they need. Or if they're less passive, less ambitious, maybe less motivated, maybe less able to work. Some people are not willing to spend that much time working. That is going to affect their future. What do you think is the future we're heading now in as young people?
I want to push this new invention. I don't know what I'm going to call it. Let's call it the content well plate. We had this thing in the UK in primary school. It's called the Eat Well plate, and it gets shoved on posters on the walls of each classroom, and it's the proportion of your food diet that should be carbohydrates, proteins, vegetables. And I think we need the exact same thing, but for the content we consume, because just like you are what you eat, you are what you listen to, you are the sum of the closest 5 people to you, and those 5 people now are digital most of the time. So like mine would be Chris Williamson, Alex O'Connor, whoever else, and it's important that you choose those people wisely. So I'd love to see more education on, I'd call it digital literacy, an understanding of how to navigate the internet better in schools, and downstream from that, people can have a better content well plate or whatever it would be. So I think it's important that like on that content plate, you have some comedy, because you need to laugh in life and have some fun. It's not that deep, bro, chill out. But then also you need some meaningful philosophy. You need to really ponder the most difficult conversations and topics and questions of life. Then you also need people that can be a positive role model, that can guide you in the direction of being the best version of yourself. But then you also need some people that are more chill, so that you don't get disenfranchised and think that you're worthless because you're only looking at these jacked intellectual powerhouses. So if we can get that locked down, I'm very optimistic about the future. And I think that Gen Z, and I mean this when I say this, I think Gen Z are the last stop before our society collapses.
Oh, that's not good. Doesn't sound that good.
We are the last generation that can save the society that's currently crumbling under every other generation. We're powered by technology and we're also hindered by it. So I think it's riding on us. That's what my intuition tells me. And it's all on how we cultivate good content and we cultivate good groups online, not incel forums that are wallowing in their own victimhood, not black pill people that just want to rot in bed all day and scroll on their phone because life's meaningless. It's how do we use that technology, and then from there people start living more meaningful lives, they have better role models, and hopefully everything starts to reverse and actually trend in a direction of flourishing rather than suffering.
What do you think are the main contributors towards the society being basically collapsing, as you say? What are the main reasons behind it?
I don't want to overuse this, but I think it's so fundamental and it's so clear that it has to be said, and that's that we've started putting the cart before the horse. So we're now in an era where you no longer have to be scavenging for resources. We're actually in an era of overabundance where the skill isn't resource location, it's resource selection and being able to determine what you actually need. So not to eat too much because we've got access to so much food, not to watch too much porn or whatever it may be. We're living in an era of overabundance, and the people that are going to thrive, they're going to be the ones that have a really strong skill of selection and impulse control.
So it's basically control over yourself, over what you watch, over what you consume, that is going to drive the best of us towards success.
Yes, and back to the question of why our society is in the position that it's in, that goes deeper. It's not just things that might seem trivial to a 40-year-old, like people watching too much porn. Like, how can a society be crumbling because of that? It's not crumbling because of that. That's a symptom of many other problems. We're doing the same thing. We're putting the cart before the horse with the houses we build. We're building all these new modern houses that no one can afford to live in, and therefore we're screwed with housing. We don't have anywhere to live, so we can't have babies. There's a depopulation bomb about to go off. And again, with those modern houses being built, it's the cart before the horse because we're prioritizing some glamorous modern white building rather than building practical things that we actually need, even if they're a bit uglier. So I think that's the problem. It's in the political world, the incentive structures, again, it's to get re-elected. And you need to put the cart before the horse to do that. You need to push stuff down the line. You need to kick the can down the line, whatever it may be. You need to keep on importing migrants in mass to get your national GDP up, whilst your national GDP per capita suffers. So it's all of these little tricks to essentially appear as though you're doing good when you're just kicking the can down the alley.
And to add up to that, I think a big part of the problems that we currently have are caused by education, and the fact that it's not necessarily that education that we are all experiencing is bad. It's more that it's not modern. It's not adopted to the newest trends. I think most of the universities are trying to tackle the new emerging AI, new internet resources that people have in order to complete their assessments in the wrong way. I think while you're trying to bar one AI from being used, or try to find that, so desperately find a way to check how to detect AI, how many universities have done with ChatGPT. Another one will emerge, like Grok, that's recently been launched by Elon Musk, and it's already showing results. So I think universities really need to think about how they adapt to the circumstances that the world is moving towards. And content creation is something quite interesting and special, because previously, it's never been so easy to spread information. And previously, people obtained information through education, through reading books carefully, long hours reading books. But now people can just search something up on internet, forget it 2 minutes later, search it up again. So they won't have to necessarily go get the book, go get it back, put it back, get another book. So it's all very quick, and the access to the information is right there. And I think with this information, universities really need to make use of that, providing education on AI, providing education on how they are allowing students to use it. As I've seen many universities grow, and I think they've changed from "we're not going to let you use AI at all" to, well, maybe you can use it to search up ideas, but not more than that. And I think over time they're going to adapt and create a different sort of assessments. For example, presentations, that people are going to use presentations more often in order to practice their speaking abilities.
Yeah, well, at the moment, the education system that we have, the way you determine how successful you have been in your schooling period is information regurgitation, which is exactly what AI models do the best. They struggle with other traits that we're not teaching in schools. So play this out down the line once AI takes over way more than it does, way more than it has at the moment, which it's going to. It's inevitable, in my opinion. The people that have relied on purely being brought up by the education system, they've put their faith in the government, they've gone through primary school, secondary school, college, and then they've racked up a bunch of debt to go to university. They've put their faith in the institutions there. They're doing the exact same style of work where they're regurgitating information. They're going to be absolutely screwed when they get into the real world, because, and this is something that people speak about all the time, is that when you come out of university, you don't have the wisdom of a professor.
Yeah.
So what do you do when the information regurgitation that you had is no longer valuable, and an AI can take your job when you're 25, and you're not yet at that level of being a professor with all the wisdom and experience and ability to determine when the AI actually is slightly off? You're just not going to get employed. But I guess it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, universities not wanting to use AI is like, I don't know, the printing press coming along and becoming mainstream, and schools being like, no, this is cheating. Like, you need to keep on writing stuff on wax tablets or on, with a quiver and pen, quiver and paper or whatever. So it's stupid on one hand, but then on the other hand, is it replacing fundamental skills that we need? Like you said, people search something up using AI, and that might be better short term for retrieving the information, but then they forget it, so they're not practicing anything to do with their memory. So I think there's a balance to be had where you need to implement these things into the systems because they're going to be running the place, but also you can't compromise on fundamental skills that are maybe only developed by ditching AI. So it's a bit of a paradox.
Yeah, but also there is a whole lot of population now that is being overly critical towards universities. Universities, I think, are still a great thing and still develop your minds to a certain extent. They just don't guarantee you any sort of career. You just have to do something except for the university. And I think universities have been able to adapt well in that regard to the timetabling, understanding that students will work, understanding that students will do something on the side, prefer to do something on the side in order to be successful in future. Have you gone to the university?
No, I'm 19
No?
And I came straight out of British college, which is before you go to university, 2 years.
Why? Do you not see the value in the information you're going to get?
I definitely don't see the value for me. I can see how university is important if you want to become a doctor, and you can't just have these self-made doctors from YouTube tutorials running around with scalpels cutting people open. But for someone in the creative space, I think that university can crush a lot of your agency, and it can teach you to conform. And I don't mean that in any conspiratorial way. The skills that you're learning, the classroom that you're sat in or lecture hall, and the fact that you have to ask to go to the toilet and wait for a bell to be finished and have your lunch at certain times. It's all this factory worker style conditioning. Literally, it's like the most Pavlovian conditioning ever of having a bell ring when you can eat. So you're being taught to conform, and you're being taught a way of thinking. And I don't think that used to be the case. From speaking to my parents and people in their generation, they were encouraged to think about things and put forwards their perspective. Whereas now it seems that people are just prescribed what to think and how to think. And I think that's super dangerous. I think that actually by taking the risk of working things out yourself, using the social media that comes with certain trade-offs and risks and conspiracy theories and whatever, if you take that risk and you have high agency, you can really sculpt a life for yourself and speed track the whole process of getting employed, learning certain things without racking up a crap ton of debt that's going to follow you the rest of your working life.
What is your opinion on religion? For example, I'm coming from Ukraine. I'm a Christian Orthodox.
Okay.
I've been a Christian Orthodox for my entire life. And sometimes I ask myself whether I'm Christian Orthodox because I think I should be, or because my parents thought I should be. And they've told me I should be, and I've just taken it as granted that I'm Christian Orthodox. And it's the way I am now. And I've analyzed it, and I think I understand it relatively well. But what has been your path with religion?
I've grown up in the most atheist area in the UK, Brighton and Hove. So there are the least religious people there out of any city in the UK, percentage-wise. And my parents are very much, they have their own beliefs, but they're very quiet about it. My dad is religious, but never speaks about it. And my mum is atheist-leaning, but never speaks about it. So I've been left to sort of work stuff out myself, which is fun. But, you know, I've never grown up going to church. I'd never been to church until like a year ago when I went with a friend. So my experience has very much been like yours, was maybe being a nominal Christian where you're called a Christian, but you don't necessarily hold the values. I don't know, but that's what happens with a lot of people that are raised Christian. They're nominal.
Oh, that's true.
Was a nominal atheist, not because I held this strong belief that God can't exist and everything can be explained by science, just because that's the surroundings I was brought up in.
But what's exciting for me with not religious people, with atheists, is that how do you believe the planet was formed? How do you believe everything began? Where do you believe this all came from?
It's a difficult question to answer, and I think for me, it's the most difficult question to answer. The whole Kalam...
Because it's impossible to answer.
Absolutely. It's impossible to comprehend, and I think anyone that prescribes you an answer out their pocket, whether they're religious or not, is a con artist. But, you know, arguments like the Kalam cosmological argument, all of these different arguments for how the universe was created, they're super hard to contend with as an atheist. And I think that's the real thing that I'm probably actually putting off thinking about properly, because it's so terrifying and you can't even conceive of the answer, is things like how the universe was created, how the world was created, time, all of that stuff. I think that's much harder to argue with than the typical apologetics of suffering and free will and consciousness, whatever.
Coming back to the question of our society evolving and a lot of globalization happening, I think many of the people who are voting for populist parties, for example, are searching for that kind of answer, that they're going to be saved from that globalization, because many of the people don't live in London,
yes,
nor any of the other industrious large cities. And many of the people, quite frankly, spend time in small towns. And this globalization is pretty much a disaster for them, because it's going to, without any exaggeration, take their jobs. It's going to, quite frankly, take their jobs, take their income, and especially AI, especially some of the stuff that they've been able to do in factories that is able to now substitute the normal farmer, for example, in some way. How big do you think those problems are? And I can see clearly populists, and in the US, Donald Trump has done the same thing. He has appealed to the poorest, pretty much, people who feel lost in the society because of this globalization happening, because of a lot of immigration, because of other things which are attributed towards our world developing, moving forward.
Yeah, I don't really understand, because I'm not completely in the loop politically, what people actually mean nowadays by populism, because the way I hear the word, surely it's a great thing to be a populist because you're elected by the masses, and it sounds like it gets used to slander people, that they're appealing to, I don't know, dumber people or lower status people. Like that seems like a very elitist belief to hold. So I don't know, maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but I don't see the problem with populism. I can see that it's going to keep on rising and rising, and I think that it's been oversaid so many times on all these political podcasts, but Europe's going to keep on shifting right. That's just inevitable. I don't know what's going to happen in America. I think it's very much in Trump's hands and Vance's hands and the people around them. But in Europe, I mean, I was in Amsterdam 2 days ago, and I walked through the central town square, and I walked through 30 minutes before a random guy, I think he's been identified as coming from Romania now, that he was a migrant from Romania. He just let loose and stabbed 5 people.
Still from
for no
Europe,
reason. Still from Europe, which is even crazier. Like, what do you do when it's not just
I mean, how is it crazier? You can't just blame the other nationalities, or in which way is it crazier?
It's crazy that you've got no borders in Europe, because you've got the EU, you've got the Schengen area, all these people can transfer across, and, you know, that's built on trust, and that trust is being breached, right? At least with people coming over from elsewhere in the world, people can flog their political dead horse of Islamism and whatever, but like, it's not just them, it's cultures mixing, and it's all of this uncontrolled migration. So I need to think more carefully on it, but I can see that things aren't working, and I can see that mass migration is causing problems, mass uncontrolled migration, and something needs to be done. And I get scared saying that because it sounds like a racist thing to believe, but like, when you've got in the news every week people that aren't from Germany crashing cars into people, you've got people being stabbed in Amsterdam, Southport in the UK, whatever, although that guy was born in Wales, there's a whole debate about that, his parents. Something's not working, it's not adding up, and we need to work out what we can do from here. I don't have any answers, but I can see that people are getting seriously agitated, and it's trending in one direction, which is clamping down on it very hard. And maybe that's not for the best, but that's the direction it's going in, because the incompetent leaders aren't doing anything about it. They're keeping hush because they're scared of getting cancelled.
So answering your question that you said, what is populism? Populism is mostly, you're right, populism is mostly being talked as something negative, as in something that, for example, some leader like Nigel Farage is going to exploit the fear or concerns of the people, not for the good, but for his own benefit in order to come to power now. We don't know. And I personally don't know where this term came from, populism. But I don't know if it's a positive thing. I would probably say no, because what you would describe as like just a person rising to power and people being quite enthusiastic to vote for him is probably not populism, is just quite a competent leader offering his solutions. So I don't know, but it's surely going to, it seems like Europe is going to be moving right for quite a long time now. And the timeline that it's going to be moving right, I think entirely depends on Trump. Many people who are right-wing, many people who support populist leaders, support Trump, and lay very much a lot of trust, a lot of hope on him, and hope that he will deliver. And I hope he will. I hope he will keep the promise of his election to solve the war in Ukraine, to keep all the sides happy. And with this positive point, I would like to end our podcast. Thank you so much for allowing me into your studio, introducing me. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.